Tonight, another historic conviction. Hunter Biden, the sole surviving son of the current sitting president, found guilty on 3 felony charges. What the verdict means for the 2024 election. Plus, the globe on the edge over a Mideast ceasefire in the works.
It's clear that virtually the entire world has come together in support of the proposal. And the only open question is, will Hamas say yes?
The latest on the war in Gaza and negotiations to bring the hostages home. And Pastor Tony Evans steps down from his Dallas mega church. Find out what's next for him and the ministry. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Hunter Biden guilty on all counts, officially becoming the first child of a sitting American president to become a convicted felon. Welcome to Faith Nation from the studios of our CBN News Washington Bureau. I'm John Jessup. Well, it took the jury only 3 hours to find Hunter Biden guilty on all 3 federal gun charges. Prosecutors say Hunter Biden illegally obtained a firearm back in 2018 and lied about his drug addiction on a government form to purchase the revolver. Defense attorneys countered that Hunter was drinking alcohol at the time, not using drugs. Biden faces 25 years behind bars. However, experts say as a first offender, he likely won't get prison time. In a statement released after the jury's decision, President Joe Biden says he will accept the verdict.
This case was about the illegal choices defendant made while in the throes of addiction, his choice to lie on a government form when he bought a gun, and the choice to then possess that gun. It was these choices and the combination of guns and drugs that made his conduct dangerous.
Hunter Biden's legal troubles aren't over yet. He faces another federal trial in September on tax charges. The verdict is a major blow to the Biden family as his father enters the final months of his re-election campaign, a rematch against former President Donald Trump. It also comes on the heels of former President Trump's own historic conviction in a New York jury hush money case. Well, for more, let's go to Mark Caleb Smith, Director of the Center for Political Studies at Cedarville University. Dr. Smith, grateful to have you here tonight. Your initial response when you heard the verdict, guilty on all 3 counts?
I wasn't very surprised. I mean, Hunter Biden wrote a memoir where he talked about some of these activities and made it clear, or at least claimed to be on crack cocaine and doing other things as well. And so in that sense, the evidence was there. But I think it is, it should cause us some pause, I believe, that someone so closely connected to a current presidential candidate is a convicted felon. And so something that we should certainly consider as we think through November.
You just mentioned President Biden. He has said that he would not pardon his son and that he respects the process. What do you see as the political ramifications of the guilty verdict? Does this help or hurt either the Biden or Trump campaigns?
I really don't think it's going to have a significant political effect for a couple of reasons. I think that many people will be sympathetic to Joe Biden because of this. I don't think they necessarily blame him for his son's actions here, and know what it's like as a parent to go through a process where you have even an adult child go through these kinds of tragic circumstances in some ways. And so I think there will be some sympathy for Mr. Biden. But I also think views of Joe Biden and Donald Trump are really baked into the electorate right now for a large degree. And so it would take something, I think, more dramatic than this to see a significant shift in the polls.
We have this criminal conviction, the son of a sitting president, on the heels of the criminal conviction of former President Donald Trump just a couple of weeks ago in the New York hush money trial. Can you talk, Dr. Smith, about the significance of this moment through the long lens of U.S. history?
Yeah, we shouldn't be comfortable at all for us to have members of our ruling class, however you want to think of that term, being associated with federal crimes, either through their kids or through themselves. It shouldn't be something that we ever get comfortable with. And so to that degree, we should be ashamed, and we should be thinking about ways that we could improve our choices, I believe, for the future.
Republicans have responded calling this a step toward accountability. And this is, again, the guilty verdict of Hunter Biden. Although this likely does little to silence former President Trump and his supporters, still, what does today's conviction say about accusations that we have a two-tiered or rigged system of justice?
Yeah, I understand there's a temptation to look at a verdict like this, or even the verdict with Mr. Trump, and look at it from a partisan lens. But part of us, I think, should feel hopeful that we have a system of government where rich and powerful people can be brought to justice. Now, we could argue about the particulars of a case here and there, but to think that you have a son of a president and a former president who've been brought into a courtroom, exposed to the justice system, found guilty, I think should give us some hope for the robustness of our institutions. I also understand people might look at this and say, you know, this is just more evidence of politically motivated happenings taking place. And I think there is a little bit of a degree of truth to that, but I think you have to be really careful. If anything, I think you could argue that maybe Hunter Biden and Donald Trump were prosecuted because of who they are, you know, because of their backgrounds, because of their connections to politics, and that was some of the motivation. But at the same time, we're erring here on the side of holding them accountable. And so part of me thinks that that's healthy for our country.
We're going to have to leave it there. Dr. Mark Caleb Smith of Cedarville University, thank you so much for your time and your perspective tonight.
Thank you.
Well, hours after his son's conviction, President Joe Biden called for tighter gun laws. Speaking at a summit by Gun Sense University, he touted the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act that he signed back in 2022 to help keep firearms out of the hands of dangerous individuals.
It builds upon the dozen of executive actions my administration has taken to reduce gun violence, more than any of my predecessors, and I suspect more than all of them combined. Everything from cracking down on ghost guns, gun trafficking, so much more. Folks, we're not stopping there. It's time, once again, to do what I did when I was a senator. Ban assault weapons.
Today's event comes after the FBI released encouraging statistics on crime. According to a new report with data from 72 law enforcement agencies, violent crime dropped 15% from January to March compared to the same time last year. Murders are down by 26%, rape falling about 0.25%, 25%, and robberies falling 17%. Officials say crime varies from city to city, and national statistics don't always reflect local realities. Well, turning now to the Middle East, where 8 months of fighting has pushed the United Nations to pressure Hamas and Israel to find a way to end the war. The aim is for all parties to accept the resolution's terms and move toward peace. CBN's Brody Carter joins us with the latest. Brody, Secretary of State Antony Blinken has been in Israel working to advance this effort.
Well, John, while the U.S. urges Israel to prepare for a post-war Gaza, international pressure seems to be increasing on Hamas to make a decision towards a ceasefire.
The United Nations Security Council, in effect speaking for the entire international community, made it as clear as it possibly could be that this is what the world is looking for. 14 votes for, no votes against, something quite rare at the Security Council these days, and I think that speaks volumes too.
Secretary of State Blinken is back in the Middle East, meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other key leaders to hopefully build regional support for a three-phase peace treaty garnered by President Biden.
Everyone has said yes, except for Hamas. And if Hamas doesn't say yes, then this is clearly on them.
The U.S.-backed proposal calls for a 6-week ceasefire, along with the exchange of some Israeli captives for Palestinian prisoners. The hope is those steps could lead to a permanent ceasefire and release of all remaining captives, which also includes Americans.
SOS USA!
Family members of hostages renewed calls to bring their loved ones home.
And our message to him was that we have to bring home every single hostage. That this is an issue of all of our family members who are alive and who are not, and we need every single one of them home, and he promised that that's what he's working on.
All of the hostages, but especially our 8 American families who have loved ones in Gaza, we are determined to bring them home. The proposal that President Biden put forward is the best way to do that.
Blinken's visit follows the dramatic rescue of 4 hostages held in Gaza and turmoil in the Israeli government. To the north, IDF fighter jets struck a Hezbollah compound deep inside Lebanon overnight Monday in response to the terror group downing an Israeli drone. This marks the 5th drone shot down over South Lebanon. And once both parties accept a ceasefire and exchange hostages and prisoners, Phase 3 of that plan would involve a reconstruction effort for the Gaza Strip. John?
So, Brody, Hamas initially seemed supportive of the resolution, while Israel has had some reservations. It's been quite mum on this. Where do negotiations currently stand, Brody?
Well, although a senior Hamas official quickly agreed with the resolution on Monday, a formal response from that group this afternoon demanded Israel withdraw from the Rafah crossing. Hamas military leader Yahya Sinwar is also calling for Israel to withdraw from Gaza altogether and is pushing for a 2-state solution, including the, quote, unification of the Gaza Strip with the West Bank under the Palestinian Authority. Israel has rejected these demands, and Qatar and Egypt have stated that they will continue mediation efforts together with the United States to hopefully reach an agreement. John?
All right, CBN's Brody Carter. Thank you so much, Brody. Up next, a well-known pastor steps away from leadership. Find out why and what's next for his ministry when Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. Well-known pastor Dr. Tony Evans is stepping away from his pastoral duties at Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship in Dallas. Evans announced the decision over the weekend at his church. Without stating a specific reason, the pastor in the church said a number of years ago, Evans, quote, fell short of the high standards of Scripture. The decision to step away was taken after prayer and multiple meetings between Dr. Evans and the church's elders. Dr. Evans will undergo a healing and restoration process. Joining us now is Billy Hallowell, who focuses on the church and Christian culture at Faith Newsmakers on the CBN News Channel. Welcome to you, Billy. So to be clear, Evans is not he's stepping away. That does not mean that he's resigning. So can you remind everyone of who Pastor Evans is and why this has garnered so much attention, not just in Christian media, but also secular media?
Yeah, I mean, this is a man who's a well-known pastor, teacher, author. He's written over 100 books. Just to give you some of the numbers so we understand how sweeping this is, you know, this is a guy who started a church with 10 people in a room. It's grown to 11,000 people. That's Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. He's on 1,400 radio stations across 130 countries. So he has a lot of influence. He's also been a prominent voice on a number of important cultural issues of the day. And so this is somebody who's well-respected, well-known. And so it's made a very big, you know, splash, again, as you said, both in the church and outside of the church.
Well, the statement that he gave to the church on Sunday did not specify the nature of his personal sin. Can you talk a little bit about the process of him stepping away, what happens now at Oak Cliff Bible Church, and who assumes leadership in his absence?
Yeah, you know, I will say, I think when these situations happen, it's very interesting to see both Dr. Evans and the church really on the same page, putting out statements together. The way that they've handled this has actually been really a well-done handling of it. They have not given a lot of information, but here's what we do know. Dr. Evans will transition to become a worshiper, essentially. He'll join the rest of the flock as this process goes on. As you said, it's a process of restoration. We don't know exactly what that will look like, but it is interesting. He said, just to read a little quote here, in light of this, I'm stepping away from my pastoral duties and am submitting to a healing and restoration process established by the elders. Part of that process will be that Pastor Bobby Gibson and the elders of the church, they are going to be sort of taking the helm, giving information as it unfolds. That information will surround interim leadership, next steps in the future of the church. So, you know, to sort of put a bow on that, we have no idea if that means Evans will be returning or not. I think that probably depends on the nature of what this undisclosed sin was.
Billy, what's been the response to his decision to step away?
Yeah, I think right now we're seeing a lot of shock. This is somebody who pastored for 5 decades, right? He's, again, very forward-facing, very front-facing. I also think there's a lot of patience and waiting and understanding that I have seen from people who are trying to process. I would imagine if you're in the church and you're a member of the church, there are a lot of other emotions going on. But so far, because he was so well-respected and beloved, I think we're seeing people a little bit in shock and really waiting, not as much speculating. I think, of course, people want to know, it's human nature, what it was that led to this, but really just that shock and sort of a stunned nature that somebody so respected is maybe going through this right now.
Billy, we only have about a minute left. Can you talk a little bit about what reminder this serves for Christians, their leadership, and the idea of sin? You know, Scripture says all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
Yeah, I think we have to really take a step back and remember that as Christians, we all make mistakes, we all sin, as you said, and really be humbling ourselves in prayer for Dr. Evans, since we don't know the nature of it. And even if we did, it wouldn't matter. We should still be turning to prayer for him, for the church, for the elders, that they make the right decision for the flock there. And remembering, too, that not to put people on pedestals, and maybe even making sure we're there for our own pastors, right? We tend to put them up on a pedestal and forget that they're humans too, in need of accountability and prayer. And so I would hope that we would be thinking about those lessons in the wake of this unfortunate circumstance.
Certainly a time to rally around leadership and end them with prayer. Billy Hallowell of Faithwire, thank you so much for your time and your perspective.
Thank you.
Coming up, how some public schools are bringing faith back into the classroom. Welcome back. From gender identity to mental health struggles, students face all kinds of serious challenges today. To help, several states are allowing volunteer chaplains to serve as counselors in public schools. The latest is Florida, where Governor Ron DeSantis recently signed a measure into law. CBN's Charlene Aaron reports on the growing trend.
After this law takes effect July 1st, the process will begin as volunteer chaplains apply and undergo background checks. Then it will be up to school districts, individual students, and their parents to take part.
No one's being forced to do anything, but to exclude religious groups from campus, that is discrimination. You're basically saying that God has no place. That's wrong.
And it's a great thing. My dad was a preacher. I'm a preacher's kid, and it's great.
More than a dozen states have proposed measures to allow chaplains in public schools.
17 states are involved in chaplain legislation. Just recently, it passed out of both houses of Louisiana. We expect it to be sent to the governor soon. It's happening around the country because it is so needed.
Florida House Speaker Paul Renner believes chaplains can possibly offer alternatives for students, pointing out that guidance counselors in the state had allowed and even encouraged students to transition to the opposite sex without their parents' consent.
They were giving them different clothes to wear, changing their name without ever telling their parents. And if this is the kind of guidance they're getting from guidance counselor, I think it's about time we have a different perspective in the middle of the school that does respect our values.
This push for chaplains comes as mental health issues among students are growing and schools face a shortage of counselors. According to the American School Counselor Association, the disparity for the 2022-2023 school year came in at a ratio of 385 students to one counselor. The recommended number is 250 to 1. Rocky Malloy leads the National School Chaplains Association.
I got news of 2 children that committed suicide. One was in 8th grade, one was in 10th grade. And it's schools that did not have chaplains. The chaplain's role is to prevent that type of calamity from happening.
In 2023, Texas became the first state to allow school chaplains to help counter a decrease in qualified mental health professionals and growing teacher burnout.
The idea that our teachers now are experiencing high levels of trauma and PTSD, that is something new that's happening in education, and our teachers need support. Chaplains are great to help our teachers through this.
Texas Board of Education member Julie Pickren says chaplains have also resulted in making schools safer.
A chaplain in Texas was key in one of our school districts at noticing what was happening with the students and what was going on with these young girls. and brought it to light to the sheriff and was instrumental in identifying this human trafficking ring in a school district in Texas.
Critics, however, claim chaplains could do more harm than good. One concern being their only requirement is passing a background check, and that schools notate a chaplain's religious affiliation. The American Civil Liberties Union of Florida stating, public schools are not Sunday schools and chaplains are not school counselors. Allowing chaplains to assume official positions, whether paid or voluntary, in public schools as counselors or other support staff will undermine this right by creating an environment ripe for evangelizing and religious coercion of students in violation of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. A claim Renner disputes.
The Constitution prohibits the establishment of a religion, for example, forcing us all to be Catholic or Baptist. It does not in any way, shape, or form, despite a lot of effort to say otherwise, prohibit the free exercise of religion. And so the left has done a good job of trying to get Christians out of the public life altogether.
Meanwhile, in Oklahoma, the Satanic Temple is seeking to take advantage of this movement, threatening to deploy its ministers into schools if the state approves a measure allowing chaplains. That's something the state's education chief, Ryan Walters, strongly opposes, saying Satanists are not welcome in Oklahoma's schools.
60 years ago, they said they did something. They said, we don't need God or spirituality in school. Look where it took us to today. God is back. The chaplain is the perfect person. They're the spiritual source of a school.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Still ahead, $1 million catch for a group of competitive anglers. Next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, an annual North Carolina fishing tournament kicked off on Monday with a little bit of a twist. First team to catch a marlin weighing more than 500 pounds wins a hefty, and I mean hefty, cash prize. A fishing crew made quick work of the day, arriving at the dock shortly before 3 in the afternoon, weighing in their blue marlin at 504 pounds. Look at that thing. The crew instantly became millionaires, claiming the fabulous fishing prize of $1.7 million. A total of over 300 boats signed up for the 66th Blue Rock Blue Marlin tournament, competing for over $7 million in prizes. And congratulations on the big catch. Thanks for watching. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.